Imainaya Kashankichi. Welcome back to Nobody Taught Me. I am Serafim Burguia and this is episode 2, The Classroom. In the last episode, we talked about what it means to grow up hearing two languages from birth, and how input frequency shapes which language you actually end up speaking. In this episode, we follow Victor into school where everything shifts, and we talk about a simple but powerful idea from research. There are 4 ingredients that make language learning work, and Victor was missing half of them. When Victor started school, the language of the classroom was Spanish. His teachers wanted students to speak Spanish so they could communicate with people in the city. Quechua was spoken at home, with Victor's grandparents and parents. And from that point on, his two languages went in completely different directions. To understand why, we need to talk about how languages are actually learned. The researcher Susan Gass, working within what she calls the interaction approach, identified 4 key ingredients that drive language acquisition. Think of them like a recipe. If you leave out an ingredient, the result changes. First ingredient is input. Input is the language you hear and read around you. It is what is available to you. Victor had input in Quechua from his grandmother and his community. But here's an important distinction the researcher Corder made back in 1967. Input is not the same as intake. Input is what surrounds you. Intake is what actually gets absorbed into your system. You can hear language all day long and still not internalize it. Anyone who has sat in a foreign language class and felt the words go in one ear and out the other knows exactly what this feels. And here's the thing about Victor's Quechua input. His grandmother never adjusted her speech for him. She just talked. In the research, when native speakers slow down, simplify their vocabulary, use gestures, and repeat themselves to help a learner understand, we call that foreigner talk or teacher talk. On one study by Klavegan, followed by a kindergarten teacher who said to her native speaking students, "These are babysitters, taking care of babies. Draw a line from uppercase Q to lowercase q." But to a beginner learner of English, the same teacher said just 2 words, baby, babysitter. So she had to adjust everything depending on who she was talking to. Victor's grandmother did none of that. She just spoke naturally, at full speed, the way she spoke to everyone. Victor understood through context and necessity, but a lot of what she said probably went right past him. So there was input, but intake, not so much. The second ingredient is output. Output is the language you produce. You speak it, you write it, and you use it. And here is where the researcher Meryl Swain made a discovery that changes everything about how we think about heritage languages. Swain studied children in French immersion programs in Canada. These kids sat in French classrooms for years. They heard French all day. They could understand French just fine, but when they spoke, they did not sound like native speakers. Their grammar was off, their vocabulary was limited. And why? Because they had plenty of input but almost no opportunities to produce French in ways that required precision. They could get by, and they could understand, but nobody pushed them to speak carefully. Swain called this comprehensible output, or pushed output. The idea is that learners need to be pushed towards delivering a message that is not only understood but is precise, coherent, and appropriate. You have to struggle with the language. You have to try to say something, realize you cannot say it correctly, and try again. There is a great example of this from a famous study. A learner was trying to describe a magnifying glass but did not know the word. She said bigger glass to see. The other person did not understand. She tried again, like spectacle for older person. Still no. So she kept going. For make the print bigger to see the print, for magnify. And finally, magnifying glass. She got there because the conversation forced her to keep trying. And afterwards, she said, "He is forcing me to think harder for the correct word." Victor was never forced to think harder, as many people in Bolivia. He used Spanish words inside Quechua grammar because it worked, so people understood him. And nobody pushed him to find the Quechua word, so he never did. The third ingredient is interaction. Not just hearing language and not just speaking it, but going back and forth with another person, negotiating meaning, clarifying misunderstandings, etc. Long's interaction hypothesis says that learning happens when communication breaks down and you have to fix it. When someone says, "What do you mean?" and you have to rephrase. When someone does not understand you and you have to try a different word. Gas has a very interesting example of a man who calls what he thinks is a TV store to ask about prices, but he accidentally called a TV repair shop. So the entire conversation, the man responds with, "Uh-huh, okay, mm-hmm." He sounds like he understands perfectly, but he has no idea they're talking about repairs. He fakes understanding for the entire call because he knows how to use what researchers call back-channel cues. Those little verbal signals like "yeah" and "right" that make it seem like you are following along. He never actually negotiates meaning. He never says, "Wait, what do you mean here?" So he never learns anything from this conversation. The fourth ingredient is feedback. Someone telling you, directly or indirectly, that what you said was not quite right. Research by Kim McDonough with Thai learners of English found that the single best predictor of whether someone actually requires a new language form is whether they get the chance to modify their output after receiving feedback. Not just hearing the correction, hearing it and then trying again. Victor told us in the interview that nobody ever corrected his Quechua. Nobody took the trouble to say, "You can express that with this word." So they left him to figure it out on his own. So considering this, let's go back to the recipe. 4 ingredients: input, output, interaction, and feedback. Victor had input from his grandmother. He had some output when speaking Quechua in town, but he had almost no meaningful interaction that challenged him to improve, and 0 corrective feedback. 2 out of 4. And with 2 ingredients missing, his Quechua reached a ceiling and stayed there. So what we learned from this episode is that hearing language is not enough. Even speaking is not enough. You need to be pushed. You need someone to tell you when something is wrong. You need conversations that break down so you can build them back up. So in the next episode, we move beyond the classroom and into something harder to talk about: shame and culture. How Victor felt about Quechua as a teenager, why that matters for language learning, and what happened when he finally changed his mind. Thanks for listening. This is Nobody Taught Me. Fun Boys. 4 lessons on saving a language.